Okay, get ready to have your mind blown, especially if you're a software developer out there, especially if you're, solo or part of a small startup.
Mm.
Imagine this, building mobile apps,
Yeah.
but with the same speed and ease as you build websites.
Wow.
Instant updates, no more waiting around for App Store approvals,
Right.
one code base for everything.
It's like a dream come true, isn't it?
It sounds pretty dreamy to me, that's for sure.
Well, that's the dream that Hyperview is trying to make a reality.
Hyperview.
Hyperview, it's an open source project, and it's really making waves in the mobile development world.
As a developer myself, I'm always on the hunt for tools that can simplify our lives, make things easier.
Yeah.
And you've handed me this stack of Hyperview docs. We've got
Huh.
GitHub info, developer guides, real-world examples, the whole shebang.
The whole 9 yards.
So I'm ready to dig in and extract the good stuff.
Okay, sounds good.
Let's start with the basics.
Okay.
How does Hyperview actually work? What can you actually build with it? And the big question, is it really free?
Okay, let's start with the how.
Okay.
Hyperview uses something called HXML.
HXML.
Yeah, HXML, and you can think of it like HTML,
Okay.
but for apps.
Okay.
So it's a simple language. You use it to describe your app's layout, its content, how users interact with it.
Okay.
You write your app's logic on a back-end server,
Okay.
and the Hyperview client, which lives on the user's phone, fetches and displays it all dynamically, kind of like a web browser.
So it's like instead of serving up web pages, you're serving up pieces of an app.
That's a great way to put it, yeah.
Wow.
And because everything is controlled by that server, you can update your app instantly just by changing the HXML.
Hold on. So no more App Store approval process.
I know.
No more forcing users to download a new version.
Yeah.
You're telling me, like, I could fix a bug,
Yeah,
add a new feature,
right.
and it would just, like, instantly be live for everyone using the app.
Yes, exactly.
That's a game changer,
It is.
especially for, indie developers like myself who
Yeah.
don't have a big team
Yeah.
or months to wait for approvals.
Absolutely. You're much more agile.
Okay, now let's talk about that free part.
Okay.
You said it was free, right?
Absolutely. Hyperview is completely open source, so you can use it.
Okay.
You can modify it. You can contribute to it. No licensing fees.
That's music to my ears.
Good.
Okay, but before I get too carried away, let's talk about what I can actually build with this thing.
Oh, okay.
Can I build any type of app? Or are there limitations?
There are always limitations.
Okay, lay it on me.
Okay, so Hyperview, it really shines when it comes to apps that are driven by content and frequent updates.
Okay.
So like social media feeds,
Okay.
news apps,
Yeah.
marketplaces,
Got it.
anything where data is constantly changing.
So if I'm building a game
Uh-huh.
with complex graphics
Okay.
or an app that needs to work offline,
Yeah, those might not be the best fit for Hyperview.
I see. So Hyperview really relies on that network connection, right?
Yes, it relies heavily on network communication. If your app needs to perform like complex calculations
Right.
on the device itself,
Yeah.
or store a lot of data locally,
Okay.
you might want to consider some other options.
Okay.
But for apps that primarily fetch and display data, it's incredibly powerful.
Gotcha. So it's all about choosing the right tool for the right job.
Right. That's right. Always.
Okay. Well, I'm starting to see the appeal here.
Good.
I'm familiar with building websites, but, I'm not a mobile development guru.
Okay.
So how steep is the learning curve with Hyperview?
It's actually built on top of React Native,
React Native. Okay.
which is a popular framework
Yeah.
for building mobile apps using JavaScript.
Hmm.
So if you're already familiar with React Native,
Okay.
you'll have a head start.
To be honest, my React Native experience is pretty limited.
Okay.
Is that going to be a major roadblock for me?
Not at all.
Okay.
The Hyperview docs, they do a pretty good job of walking you through the basics.
Okay.
Plus, there's a really vibrant community of developers out there who are always willing to help.
Okay. That's good to know.
Yeah, and honestly, HXML itself is pretty intuitive.
Okay.
Even if you're not a React Native expert,
Okay.
it's designed to be readable and easy to understand, kind of like, HTML.
Okay. That's reassuring.
Good.
So let's get practical for a minute.
Okay.
How do I actually get Hyperview up and running on my machine?
Okay, so you'll need to install Node.js
Okay.
and Yarn if you don't have those already.
Okay.
Then you can clone the Hyperview repository from GitHub,
Got it.
install the dependencies, and you're good to go.
Cloning the repo, installing dependencies, that sounds pretty familiar
Yeah, should be familiar territory.
for a web developer.
Like myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you mentioned earlier that Hyperview has like two main parts.
Right.
There's the backend server
Yes.
and then the client on the user's phone.
Uh-huh.
How do those two pieces fit together?
So you'll need a backend server
Yeah.
that's responsible for generating your HXML documents and serving them to the Hyperview client.
Yep.
You can use any server-side technology you're comfortable with.
Okay.
The Hyperview documentation even provides examples using Express.js,
Express.js, okay.
which is a popular Node.js framework.
Yeah, I've heard of that one.
Good.
So I can basically use my existing web development skills to build that backend,
Yeah.
which then feeds the HXML to the Hyperview client that's running on the user's phone.
Precisely.
Got it.
And to make things even easier, Hyperview provides a demo server and an Expo project that you can use to start experimenting right away.
An Expo project. Now, what is that?
Expo is a tool that simplifies React Native development.
Okay.
So you don't have to mess around with setting up a full development environment.
So it's kind of like a starter kit or something.
Yeah, you could think of it like that.
Awesome. I love when things are plug and play like that.
Me too. It makes things so much easier.
So let me get this straight. I can get that demo server running, fire up the Expo project, and boom, I'm looking at a basic Hyperview app on my phone.
You got it.
That's amazing.
It is. And from there, you can start tweaking the HXML.
Yeah.
Adding your own content and exploring the different features Hyperview has to offer.
Okay, I'm already itching to get my hands dirty and play around with this thing.
I bet. It's exciting stuff.
But before we go full-on coding mode, let's talk a bit more about HXML itself.
Okay, sounds good.
I'm picturing something like HTML.
Yeah.
With tags for different UI elements. Am I on the right track?
You are.
Okay.
HXML is a markup language, and it uses tags to define the structure and content of your app. So there are tags for things like text, images, buttons, lists.
Okay, I'm with you.
And even more complex elements like navigation stacks and tab bars.
Okay, we'll have to dive into those later.
We will. They're exciting.
So if I wanted to create just like a really simple screen with like a title, some text, and a button.
Yeah.
How would that look in HXML?
Okay, let's say you want to create a screen that says, "Welcome to my app."
Okay.
With a button labeled, "Learn More."
Okay, I like it.
Here's how you might write that in HXML.
Okay.
Screen body.
Body. Okay.
Title, "Welcome to my app.text," button, "Learn More," button,
Mm-hmm.
body screen.
Got it. Wow, that's way simpler than I expected.
It is. It's designed to be simple.
It really does look a lot like HTML.
It does.
So the screen tag, that defines a single screen in my app.
Yes.
And inside that, I can add elements like text and button.
That's right, just like you would with HTML elements.
Okay, so I can use HXML to like define the basic structure of my app.
Yeah.
But what about styling?
Okay.
Does Hyperview use CSS for styling, like websites do?
It actually has its own styling system.
Oh, okay.
But it's pretty straightforward.
Okay.
You can define styles directly in your HXML document using a styles tag. Files?
Okay. And then you apply those styles to elements using style attribute.
Okay.
Kind of like inline styles in HTML.
Got it.
But more organized.
So no cascading style sheets.
No, not in the traditional sense, but you can still create reusable styles and apply them to different elements.
Okay, so it's got its own way of doing things.
It does.
But it still achieves the same goal.
Exactly.
Okay, this is making more and more sense.
Good.
I can build the structure with HXML, style it up,
Right.
and because it's all powered by my backend server,
Yes.
I have complete control. I can update things on the fly.
Right.
What's not to love?
Well, as with any technology, there are always trade-offs.
Of course there are.
We've already talked about the reliance on a network connection
Yeah.
being a potential downside,
Right.
but we can delve deeper into those considerations
Okay.
and explore some more advanced Hyperview concepts
Okay, let's do it.
after a quick break. Sounds good to me. We've covered a lot of ground already. I'm eager to learn more. Stay tuned, folks. We'll be right back.
Okay.
Okay, we're back, and I gotta say, my head is spinning a little bit, but in a good way.
It's a lot to take in, I know.
Yeah, but I'm starting to get the hang of this HXML thing. It's pretty cool how it all works.
It is, and we've just scratched the surface.
You mentioned something before the break about navigation stacks and tab bars.
Yeah.
I gotta admit, those caught my attention.
They're pretty important.
Yeah, because on websites, we've got menus and links and all that.
Right.
But how does that translate to a mobile app?
Well, that's where Hyperview's navigation system comes in.
Okay.
It lets you define those classic mobile app navigation patterns right in your HXML.
Really? Right in the HXML?
Yeah, you've got stack navigators.
Stack navigators.
Think of them like going deeper into a menu, each screen kind of stacked on top of the last one.
Okay, I can picture that.
And then there are tab navigators.
Tab navigator.
Yeah, those are like the buttons you see at the bottom of the screen, you
Yeah.
know, to switch between different sections of the app.
Right, like a home screen, a profile screen, that kind of thing.
Exactly.
So I can create those, like, those familiar mobile app layouts
Yes.
just by writing them into my HXML.
You got it.
No need to write, like, a bunch of custom code to handle transitions and animations and all that stuff.
Hyperview takes care of all that for you.
That's awesome. That's one less thing for me to worry about.
Exactly. It simplifies things a lot.
So, okay, let's say I'm building, I don't know, a simple e-commerce app.
Okay, I like it.
And I want to have, tabs for, like, home, products, and cart.
Classic e-commerce layout.
Exactly. So how would I structure that in HXML?
All right, so you'd start with the tab navigator tag.
Tab navigator, okay.
And then inside that, you'd define each tab using the tab.
Okay.
And each tab would have a title attribute, which is what the user sees, and a route attribute, which is basically like the internal name for that tab.
So it's like the URL, but for the app.
Yeah, you could think of it like that.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then inside each tab, you'd put the content for that screen.
So for the Home tab, I'd put the HXML for my home screen content.
Exactly.
And for the Products tab, I'd put the HXML for, like, my product listings.
Right, and so on.
Okay, I'm starting to get the hang of this.
Right.
But what if I want to have, like, more complex navigation within a tab?
Okay, let's say on your Products tab, you want the user to be able to tap on a product and then see a detailed view of that product.
Right, like a product details page.
Exactly. You could use a stack navigator for that.
Okay, so inside the Products tab, I would put a stack navigator tag.
That's right.
And then inside that, I'd define the screens for the product listings and the product details page.
Exactly.
So I could, like, nest navigators within each other to create, like, really complex navigation structures.
You can. It's very flexible.
That's amazing. It's way simpler than I thought it would be.
It's designed to be.
But, okay, all of this is still pretty static, right?
Well, yes and no.
What do you mean?
We've defined the structure.
Right.
But we haven't really talked about how to make things happen.
Yeah, like when the user taps on a button or interacts with the app.
That's where Hyperview's behavior system comes in.
Behavior system? Okay, tell me more.
So you can attach behaviors to elements in your HXML.
Like buttons?
Yeah, buttons, images, anything a user can interact with.
Okay.
And these behaviors define what happens when a user interacts with that element.
So, for example?
Let's say you have a button that says Add to Cart.
Okay, yeah. Every e-commerce app needs one of those.
Right. You could attach a behavior to that button that, when tapped, sends a message to your server.
To add the item to the user's cart.
Exactly.
So the app's logic, the actual adding to the cart part.
Yes.
That still happens on my server.
Right.
But I can use these behaviors to control how the app responds to user interaction.
Precisely.
Without writing a bunch of, like, client-side code.
That's the power of Hyperview.
This is wild. It's like I'm controlling the app from the server, but the user still feels like they're interacting with a native app?
That's the goal.
Okay, my mind is officially blown.
Good. I like to hear that.
Okay, one more thing before we move on.
Okay.
We talked about deep linking earlier.
Yes. Deep linking.
Can you remind me how that works in Hyperview?
Sure. So deep linking is basically a way to link directly to a specific screen in your app.
Great.
Even if the app isn't open yet.
Okay.
So let's say you have a product details page.
Yeah.
And you want to be able to share a link to that page.
Right, like on social media or in an email.
Exactly. With deep linking, you can create a link that, when clicked, will open the app.
Okay.
And take the user directly to that product details page.
That's super handy so they don't have to, like, browse through the whole app to find it.
Exactly.
How do you actually set that up in Hyperview, though?
Okay, so it all comes down to updating what's called the entry point URL.
Entry point URL, okay.
For the Hyperview component.
Okay.
This URL tells the app which HXML document to load, which defines the initial navigation state.
So if I wanted to deep link to a specific product details page, I would update the entry point URL to point to an HXML document where that product details page is already loaded.
Precisely.
And Hyperview handles all the magic behind the scenes.
It does.
This is seriously impressive stuff.
It is. It's a powerful system.
Okay, so we've talked about structure, navigation, deep linking. But what about, like, the actual look and feel of the app?
Good question.
Does HXML provide, like pre-built UI components.
Okay, so Hyperview takes a bit of a minimalist approach when it comes to UI components.
Okay.
It provides a core set of elements.
Okay, like what?
Like view, text, image, button, input.
Those are pretty basic.
They are, but they're the building blocks for most user interfaces.
Okay, so I have the raw materials.
Yes.
But I'm not limited by any, like, predefined styles or components.
Exactly.
So it's like a bring your own UI kind of philosophy.
You could say that.
I mean, I guess it gives you maximum flexibility.
It does.
But isn't that a lot of work for the developer?
Not necessarily.
How so?
Remember, Hyperview is built on top of React Native.
Right.
And React Native has a huge ecosystem of third-party libraries.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
So you can use those existing React Native libraries to get pre-built components, styling, themes, all sorts of stuff.
So if I want a fancy date picker or a tab bar that already has some cool animations built in, I can just grab a React Native library and use it in my Hyperview project.
That's right.
That's a huge relief.
Good. I'm glad.
Because I was starting to worry that I'd have to, like, style every button and text field from scratch.
Nope. You can leverage the power of the React Native community.
This is great. It's like the best of both worlds. I get the flexibility to build my UI from scratch.
Yeah.
But I can also use pre-built components if I want to.
Exactly. It's your choice.
This is all incredibly exciting stuff.
It is. There's a lot to be excited about.
We've covered so much, from the basics of HXML to navigation, deep linking, and now even tapping into the React Native ecosystem for UI design.
It's a lot, but hopefully it's starting to make sense.
It is. It really is.
It did.
But before we get too carried away singing Hyperview's praises, let's take a step back and be realistic for a moment.
Right.
Every technology has its downsides, its limitations.
Right. There's no silver bullet.
Exactly. So when we come back, we'll wrap things up by digging into the pros and cons of Hyperview.
Okay. Sounds good.
We'll talk about those potential downsides.
Yes.
And what all of this means for the future of mobile app development.
The future is exciting.
It is. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Okay, we're back, and it's time to get down to brass tacks. We've explored the ins and outs of Hyperview, but I think we need a dose of reality here.
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in the excitement of a new technology.
Totally. So let's put on our skeptical hats for a minute and talk about those potential downsides, those limitations we hinted at. What are the trade-offs developers need to be aware of before they dive headfirst into Hyperview?
Well, the elephant in the room, and we've danced around it a bit, is that Hyperview apps rely heavily on a constant network connection.
Yeah, we talked about that. It's a deal breaker if your app needs to work flawlessly offline, like those note-taking apps or GPS navigation.
Exactly. If you're building something that needs to function in spotty or no connectivity situations, Hyperview might not be the right fit.
You're trading offline capability for the speed and flexibility of those instant updates and a single code base. It's a classic development dilemma.
It is. Developers really need to weigh those pros and cons carefully and decide what's most important for their particular app.
You know, another thing that keeps popping into my head as we talk about this server-side magic is security.
Yes, a crucial consideration.
If my app is basically a window into my server, how do I lock things down to make sure no one's snooping around where they shouldn't be?
That's a smart question. The good news is that securing a Hyperview app isn't all that different from securing any web application.
Okay, so it's less about protecting HXML itself and more about protecting the server that's dishing it out.
You got it. You'd use the same tried and true security practices you'd apply to any web app: input validation, authentication, authorization, the whole 9 yards.
So it's like, yeah, we want strong windows, but we also need a solid foundation and a secure structure for the whole house.
I like that analogy. Security is a holistic thing, and with Hyperview, that server is a critical piece of the puzzle.
All right, that makes me feel a bit better. But let's zoom out for a sec and talk big picture. What do you think Hyperview signals for the future of mobile development? Is this a blip on the radar, or are we seeing a fundamental shift?
It's tough to predict the future, but I think Hyperview points to a broader trend of blurring the lines between web and mobile development.
Yeah, more and more, it feels like the tools and frameworks are converging, allowing devs to use their existing web skills to create those native mobile experiences.
Absolutely. It lowers the bar for entry and lets developers focus on creating awesome user experiences without getting bogged down in platform-specific stuff. Hyperview takes that a step further by putting the server in control, embracing that thin client model.
Right, and for solo developers and startups, that's huge. Being able to push updates instantly, squash bugs on the fly, and escape the App Store bureaucracy is incredibly appealing.
It's the dream Hyperview is selling, and for certain types of apps, it's a dream worth chasing. There will always be a need for traditional native development, but I think we'll see tools like Hyperview gain more and more traction as the demand for efficiency and flexibility grows.
Well, we've journeyed deep into the world of Hyperview, explored its potential, and acknowledged its limitations. If there's one thing I want our listeners to take away from this deep dive, what would it be?
I'd say it's this. Hyperview offers a different way of thinking about mobile apps. It's not a silver bullet. But for developers who embrace its philosophy and are comfortable with the trade-offs, it's an incredibly powerful tool for creating those dynamic, server-driven experiences.
Couldn't have said it better myself. If you're intrigued by Hyperview, head over to hyperview.org and explore the documentation. They've got fantastic examples, tutorials, and a really welcoming community ready to help.
Don't be afraid to tinker, experiment, and see what you can build. Who knows, you might just stumble upon the future of mobile development.
And with that, we'll wrap up this Hyperview exploration. Until next time, keep learning, keep building, and keep pushing the boundaries of technology.